Folks, Marcus here from the Ashland Fly Shop. Today we're going to tie a little winter steelhead pattern that I've been working on. It's kind of a rendition of one we did last year called the Dude Where's My Cone. I just call this the Dude Where's My Cone version 2.0 because we're going to do it a little different with some different materials. So let's hop into it. I'm going to start with the Aquafly's 26mm round eye shank. And I'll just seat this guy in my vise. Make sure the eye is kind of straight up. Actually, before I do that, may I not forget. So last time I hit a cone in there. This time I'm going to throw a bead in there, but it's the same process for a cone or a bead. So before you get it in your vise, you just want to slide whatever you're going to use on there. Cone. This is the Pro Tube bead, and I would think for the way this is tied, you would probably need one of these Pro Tube beads because the opening eye is thicker on them, so you can get your fire line or whatever you're using as trailing wire through the bead and then back through, which is important to get it through the eye. So for a hook, I've got the Owner No Escape size 2 hook. This is a barbless hook. It's kind of all I tie with and use anymore. It's a pretty dang good hook. And then I'll grab a section of fire line. Gonna start with a longer piece of it than I might need. Kind of put the tips together. And you just want to come up through the underside of the eye and bring the wire or line around the bend of the hook so that the hook, when it's hanging back there, is nice and straight. Then I've got some cheapo rubber tubing. I'm gonna, usually on an intruder pattern, I just cut a little bit, maybe half this length. I'm gonna use a longer section because this profile of this fly is actually going to hang a little bit further back. It's just a single station fly, so I've got the hook hanging a little bit further back than what I would do if it was a small intruder pattern. So once I've got that rubber material on the fire line, I'll just try and get it over the eye of the fly. It kind of is harder the colder it is to get that stuff over there. But you just want it to be like that, so it's over the eye of the fly, so everything's nice and secure. And then you want to gauge what this is going to look like going through and back over. So I'll try and keep these two materials as straight as I can. And I'm going to fit them through this bead before I start with any thread, actually. And I'll just pull it to where I want it to be in the back there, and line them up. And then I'll start. It's okay if it gets kind of wonky, because until you really lock that thing down, you've got room to maneuver this guy around. So just tied it in there to hold it there. But I want this material to be totally on top of the shank. And then this tie-in point, I want this black rubber to be right at the end of there. So right now I'm a little short, so I'll just slide everything back and kind of just plan on where that's going to be. I might move it a little bit further up. And then I'll start to, these wraps will actually secure this. Yeah, that'll be good. So when I come through the eye, what I do is I put one strand through the eye, and I'm going to wrap that all the way up and flip it around and pull straight back and keep nice tension on it and come back. and then I'll catch this second strand and do the same thing. And the only reason that I've started doing that compared to doing them at the exact same time is I've had, when I pull them through at the same time, it's hard to keep that tension on both strands really even. And you can get where one of those strands in the eye, so you've got the eye and then the strand, and one of them kind of jumps up there, so it takes up more room in the eye than what you're looking for. So doing them one at a time, I've found, has been a pretty easy way to make that work. So I'll then fit the tag ends of those through the bead again, and I'll think about where I want this bead to end up in the fly. And this is a good point to cut these tag ends so that they aren't hanging out of the back of the fly. But this bead in this fly is going to hang right about there, maybe a little further back. So I'm going to tie those strands in front of the bead, and you could just wrap over the bead. I don't do that. I just don't like the idea of a couple wraps or maybe one or two wraps of thread being the only thing that's holding that bead in place. So I actually whip finish and cut my thread and then start behind the bead. And I just think that that is a safer connection. And then I'll just lock this guy down. And that way my thread isn't crossing over that bead. So I've got a little magnet here. It'll help keep my hook out of my hand while I'm tying. Then I'm going to start a dubbing loop. Lock it off and come up above the loop. Just going to get a little wax in there. I'm using Vise 50 denier thread, which anymore is about all I use. And I don't think I always need to, but I really like just using a little wax on it. Just seems like a good thing to be in the practice of. So I've got started, we're going to start carrying these bench rings from Loon, and they're kind of cool. They can just help keep all your materials organized, and it's nice. You can have them splayed out on your table, and when you need dubbing, you just grab the whole ring and slide a pack off there that you want, and then you just tie it. It's kind of a nice way to keep things organized. But for this dubbing ball in the back, I'm going to use Senyo's Fusion Dubbing in the Pink Lady and pick it out a little bit. And I'm going to use, it's going to be a good size ball on the back of this guy. So I'm going to throw it in the loop, give it a good spin. And with spinning, you can do a couple things. You can spin where your finger is on your dubbing spinner like that. It might take a little longer, or you can put your finger on the thread, and then that spinner will just keep going and going and going. And when I'm picking this stuff out, I usually just start with a coarse brush like this, and then this fine-toothed little finger brush that we started carrying has been awesome as a kind of a secondary brush to just really get all those fibers out of there. So I'm going to start wrapping forward. And I've got a nice frizzy looking attraction point in the back of the fly. And I'll just pick that guy out again. And I'm actually going to tie off again. So I'm just going to do Actually, my whip finisher isn't big enough. I'll do a hand whip finish. And I might do another one, just so I'm not worried about that. If you were really didn't trust your knots, you could just do a little zap-a-gap right there. But the bead will come right on top of that. And then I'm going to start right in front of it. And then I'm going to go right into another dubbing loop that's going to hide this bead. So I'm going to do another dubbing loop in front of the bead. And this time I'm going to use Predator Wrap. This is the purple, gold, and black, which is pretty nice stuff. Just gives the fly a nice little sparkle. So I'm going to come in here and kind of separate these a little bit before I give it a spin. And then I'll give it a good spin. So this is the style. This time with the dubbing loop, I just spun it with my finger on the thread, and you can see how the momentum of the spinner just goes for quite a bit longer compared to having your finger on there. So same thing, I'll pick it out a little bit with this guy, and then I'll come back with the really spiny pick. And this stuff, when I use Predator Wrap, I kind of get it close to the tie-in point or at the tie-in point, and then when I'm there, I just fold it back so it's kind of like a, almost like a really, really fuzzy chenille, and that just seems to be a good way to get all those fibers going the way you want them. So you can see in there, that, you know, if you didn't know, you might not even know there's bead in there if you weren't paying attention to the first part of the video. And that's kind of the point, is you can get the benefit of having a bead or a cone in the fly, but it doesn't affect the look of it. So I'm going to start another dubbing loop. And get some wax on there. This is probably going to be, I might do 2 loops because I'm going to have long ostrich that goes through the body of the fly, and then a short second loop of ostrich. I could probably do them at one time, but I think I'll split them up and do 2 different ones. But the long ones are going to give us that length to get to the back of the fly, and then the short ones are going to give us a little bit more of a shouldery look in the fly. So for the long ones, I've got just a few left on this guy, and I'm going to use these. Grab a little bit of water to just wet my fingers. And then I'll just get to where I'm close to wrapping and make sure they're all going the direction I want. I think pretty much kicked that feather, but I want a few extra longer fibers in there. So these ones I'm just going to tie in. Just grab a couple of these guys. And then I just rotate the fly and see where those might be needed. Doesn't look like I got enough coverage on the bottom of the fly. And I don't tie in ostrich very much. Usually I spin it, but it is a more precise way tying in. You can, you just choose where they go in the fly, which is a nice feature of just tying them in, is you get to choose the coverage around the fly. All right, I'm going to do another loop here. And this one is going to have shorter, finer ostrich to kind of bulk us up here. Trying to decide. I think I'm going to tie in the flash right now, actually. I think having the flash longer and hanging out with those longer fibers of ostrich is what I want. So I've got, this is a pretty used up piece of the Winter Run Blue New Age Krinkle Mirror Flash, and I'll lay it on my near side and then fold it over and get it on the far side. Sometimes it's nice if you're doing 2 loops like this, or like Schlappen at the front of the fly. It can be nice to get that flash in there first, and then it just shows up. It's just a little less present when you have some material over it. Or if you were really wanting a flashy fly, then you could put it the last feature above everything else in the fly. Up to you. So I've got some kind of finer black Montana Fly Company ostrich, and this is a nice use for this stuff that might not be long enough to use in the intruder or in a bigger intruder. This is a nice purpose for shorter, finer pieces of ostrich. So I'll lay it in the loop, get everything kind of lined up, and then, oh, don't want to catch my flash. Rescue that out of there. Need a little water to keep that back. It's really nice to have a cup of water next to you when you're tying. Like you saw there, that flash was trying to creep up and get caught by these strands of ostrich, and just having that water is really nice to keep your fly neat and in line when you're tying. So again, I've got another little section of ostrich that I'm gonna come in here with. Just get it all tied down, and you can see, or at least I can, how it just kind of covers up that flash running through the body, but you still get the flash hanging behind it. And I kind of think that's a cool look, because I don't fish a lot of very flashy flies personally. Now do a Schlappen collar. I'm going to cut towards the base of this feather and get a lot of this fluff pulled out. And this feather, this is one of these Schlappen that twists partway through. And I still use these. I just grab them. I usually cut them in two, and I try and grab above and below that twist point. Let me see how this is. I think I'm going to be able to make this work, but we'll see. I'll save the tip of the feather in case it's not laying down how I like it. I'm just going to save that feather and come in here. Schlappen's pretty maneuverable. It's not a super stiff fiber, so if you have it like that, where it looks like it's twisting, you can usually manipulate it. And then, like I'm doing, just wrap really slow. If you see any of these fibers getting trapped, make sure to catch them out of there with your scissors or with a bodkin. And then I'll grab this stem. And cut it off. And then, so last time when we did the Dude Where's My Cone, it had a larger piece of rabbit hanging over it, and to give that similar purple coloring through the fly this time, which you can do this step before or after the collar, it just depends on how you want it to look. Today I'm doing it after the collar, but I've done it both ways. But I've got a piece of fin raccoon that's going to hang over the top of the fly as a wing. And this stuff, it does not take very much of it to get this effect. So you can get a little clump, and then I'll pull away these guard hairs, and I'll actually grab just about 2/3 of what I pulled out there, maybe even a little less. And it's pretty poofy when it's dry, but when it gets wet, it'll just run through the fly. So I'm going to twist my vise so so I can look right on top of the fly, because I want that wing to just be directly down the middle of the fly. I'm going to really make sure that guy's in there before cutting it. And I'll cut it really short. So it's all poofy right now. I can show you what a little water does. A little water just brings. So you've just got, it's just kind of a cool purple stripe that comes through the fly. And then I'll finish up this head, just get a little bit of a thread head. And when we get this thing swimming in the tank, I have a feeling it's going to look pretty enticing. So I'm going to do a couple whip finishes. There's one. There's two. And then I'll come in with a head that's like this, that's on the bigger side. I can probably just get away with the UV applicator bottle without doing a bodkin in there. But the bodkin is a reliable way to get that glue laying down just the way you want it. When I'm gluing these heads, I'm just, The main thing I'm trying not to do is to get that glue back on the materials, which on some flies is easier to do than others. Just gonna hit that from all angles. Black and purple is a killer winter combo. Productive all over, anywhere that steelhead swim. It's got a little pink hot spot in the back. So I just grab the fly, grab the hook, peel everything back, and then bring this tubing over and kind of cinch it in there. And then you can see having that longer section of tubing keeps the hook back to where that stuff is hanging out. I think I'm just gonna leave it. I do not mind different lengths of strands hanging through the back of the fly. I actually think that's a cool look in the water. Could have done the hook just a hair closer so that the point of the hook is right at the tip of this purple wing, but I think that's just about where we're looking at. So that is the Dude Where's My Cone, or Dude Where's My Bead, Dude Where's My whatever the heck is hanging out in there. Thank you very much for tuning in.